I'm not sure how much battery is left. I'm gonna go get the laptop charger. So, I'm gonna read I'm going to medlineplus.gov. Medlineplus.gov. And I'll read what this website says. There's a gene called the FOXP2 gene, FOXP2 gene, also called, says other names for this gene: CAG repeat protein 44, also called CAGH44, also called forkhead winged helix transcription factor, also called SPCH1, also called TNRC10, also called trinucleotide repeat containing 10. Sorry, do you hear that? I'm not sure. Basically, it's well known by the scientific community that Africa has the greatest amount of genetic diversity. So, if you think about genetics as a form of technological development, the reason why technology has been developed to this level of advancement is due to our genetic development. For example, there were Homo sapiens who stayed in Africa and didn't leave. They just never, Homo sapiens have never left Africa. And a bunch of Homo sapiens also left Africa. And when they left Africa, they discovered that they weren't the first humans to leave Africa. There were other humans who had already left Africa. Those humans include Homo habilis. So there's Homo sapiens and there's Homo habilis. Homo habilis lived in Asia. Homo habilis Homo habilis went all the way even into, and not only Homo habilis, but also other humans went all the way to Australia. They went all the way to Southern Asian islands and Melanesian islands in the Southwest Pacific. So in the Southwest Pacific Ocean and the like Eastern Indian Ocean, that is where many other humans, not really other, since all of them ended up being included within Homo sapien, because Homo sapien eventually left Africa a little later than Homo habilis. Habilis means hand. So this is why I say that genetics are directly the cause of technological development. As you may know, the Middle Kingdom, also called China, China is the longest, the lengthiest ruling singular kingdom, tribe, government, whatever you want to call it. That's the longest, like, surviving government in the whole world. And that's where Homo habilis lived before Homo sapiens met Homo habilis there. Homo habilis was known for advanced tool making, and China also, they used to be called the Middle Kingdom. They were keeping a lot of secrets for a long time regarding technological development, and still to this day, Asia is where so much technological development and like cell phones, like you think of the brand Samsung, that is happening in like Korea. There's a lot of there's a lot of cell phone and computer and Android, and even they're beginning to develop like Android machines that are human-like. So it's very interesting that that's still true, and that's where Homo habilis lived. Homo habilis, remember, habilis means hand. So that is where, still to this day, so much technological advancement is happening very rapidly. And it's no coincidence that that is where Homo sapiens met Homo habilis after leaving Africa, and then Homo habilis became included within the Homo sapien tribe that left Africa. When I say tribe, I mean Homo sapiens still live in Africa. There are all sorts of different names for tribes, and that is the result. That is why Africa still has the greatest amount of genetic diversity. That includes this gene that I'm talking about today, which is called the FOXP2 gene. So African all languages developed in Africa. So, and you think about like Egyptian culture has, again, there's like a very large, the greatest amount of genetic diversity. So all sorts of mutations, all sorts of adaptations occurring in Africa still. And so Africa is a great source of I don't know, some people might call it fresh blood. So other than Homo habilis, there was also Neanderthals before Homo sapiens left Africa. Neanderthals had already been in Europe, so it's really curious that Homo habilis and Neanderthals, they left and they were living separately, one like in Asia, in the Southwest Pacific, in like course, like the Indian Ocean, that area, many islands there. And then at the same time, there was Neanderthal. Actually, switched because it's a mirror. The camera's a mirror. In Europe, there was Neanderthals. Neanderthals were known for creative, and when I say creative, I mean spiritual beliefs. Um, so when we think about cave paintings, Neanderthals, Asia, Europe is very cold. Asia is also cold. Northern Europe is extremely cold. So Neanderthals, they went all the way to where it was very cold during ice ages. They didn't care, right? Neanderthals didn't care. So Neanderthals, they were met by Homo sapiens who left and, let's just say, walked away, not left, but they walked toward, who were walking toward um, Europe randomly, and when Homo sapiens met Neanderthals, there was a lot of marriage happening, and there was a interesting development of like marriage rituals and marriage customs, and also death rituals and death customs, because Neanderthals were highly creative, highly artistic. So Homo habilis was making things with their hands, fire, like China kept a secret for a very long time, and that secret was fireworks. So Africans, they had no idea about fireworks for a very long time, and including silk. I'm wearing a silk skirt. This is a silk, not a skirt, but this is a silk fabric, 100% silk. So they, not they, but like the Chinese custom was to keep everything a secret, because they what is it, like, it was like the technology was advancing due to that secrecy, like within China. And then we can also think about how North American people, like indigenous Americans, there's South America and there's North America, so you have to think about that. To just say indigenous American, that's kind of whack, but that's what is the term that is available, that most people think about or speak. So indigenous North Americans, like, you want to think about Inuit people, like people who still live in like northern Canada. They were going from away, they were walking toward North America, and they were a mixture of Homo habilis and Homo sapien genetics. And in Europe at that time, at the same time, because this was an ice age. Ice age caused everything to freeze, so people were walking on ice. Europeans were walking on ice. Northern Europeans, that includes Neanderthals, who Neanderthals are very famous for their red hair. Red hair comes from Neanderthal genes. Blue eyes, like green eyes. So Neanderthals were known for having green eyes and red hair, and those genetics became randomly mixed into the population according to the creation of new romantic customs. Yes, romantic, like art and death and birth. It was very artistic and romantic for Neanderthals to experience. Indigenous Americans were walking toward, eventually, like Argentina, and like I said, they were continuing like one long walk from Africa. Okay, so that's where a lot of genetic diversity comes from all over the world. Me personally, I have Neanderthal genes. I do. I have Homo habilis genes. I do. And I also have Homo sapien genes. I do. Not only very old Homo sapien genes from both going into Europe and going into Asia, but also Homo sapien genes that were from Africa during the modern times, during the 1600s. So the 1600s, that was like so many years later after like the previous Homo sapiens had left, like tens of thousands of years, tens and tens and tens of thousands of years. So the FOXP2 gene is unique. It's very unique. Think about all the global languages and how unique they are, and language carries with it personal identity. Personal identity. So there are some languages that have no word for I. I. The word I is singular, except I's are not singular. So that's like an interesting dichotomy. And that's something that is programmed by this FOXP2 gene. So like I said, that's what it's interesting. We can think about this FOXP2 gene as kind of technology, and technology that programs language. So languages all over the world that are very old. It's called the Sino, uh, Sinophonic, Sinophonic. That would be like Chinese. That is a very old family language that is programmed with personal identification, including pronouns, including a sense of direction, literally a sense of orientation with the earth. So it's again no coincidence that chin, that's the Qin, chin, that means middle, and that is a concept, a personal identification that is programmed into the language. There are languages around the world that have no word for the English word you. They have no, there are languages in the world that are programmed with no pronouns he versus she, but it's gender neutral. And then many languages have a very advanced programming of feminine versus masculine. So all of this is programming by the FOXP2 gene. The FOXP2 gene, I'm going to read exactly what it is. So, like I said, this is medlineplus.gov. The FOXP2 gene provides instructions for making a protein called forkhead box P2. This protein is a transcription factor, which means that it controls the activity of other genes. I want to remind you that all proteins, including the forkhead box P2 gene, has a kinky shape. Kinky meaning like curly or spiraling. So all proteins automatically like kind of like contort, and that's kind of that's how it programs, is through the shape that it takes, or I should say there's specific kinks like to the full variety of different FOXP2 variations. Each variation has a very specific kink to it. That's programming. Okay, I'm going to continue reading now. It attaches to the DNA, or it binds to the DNA of these genes through a region known as a forkhead domain. Researchers suspect that the forkhead boxP2 protein may regulate hundreds of genes, although only some of its targets have been identified. The forkhead box P2 protein is active in several tissues, including the brain, both before and after birth. Studies suggest that it plays important roles in brain development, including the growth of nerve cells, neurons, and the transmission of signals between them. It is also involved in synaptic plasticity. That is the ability of connections between neurons, synapses, to change and adapt to experience over time. Synaptic plasticity is necessary for learning and memory. The forkhead boxP2 protein appears to be essential for the normal development of speech and language. Researchers are working to identify the genes regulated by forkhead boxP2 that are critical for learning these skills. So this is related to music. There are cultures that, and I'm one of these people. We're all like this, who are programmed to have a feeling of trust, a feeling of knowledgeability, as a result of listening to other people sing. So, for example, in Europe, a place like Ireland, for example, there's something called bards, and bards, they would tell stories, and they would, rather than just saying the story, in order to make it more like easy for a listener to catch on, like literally catchy, to catch on to the meaning, the true meaning, it would be through song. So we think about someone like Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, if that was even his, the name that Shakespeare was named by his parents at birth, if he was named by his parents. I wasn't named by my parents, but he had an incredible FOXP2 ability, and he revolutionized, he totally changed the way that English is not only spoken, but especially written. And he did that by creating a pattern, or basically a kink. His words had a kink to them that was, it's called iambic pentameter. And that is basically a type of kink that he was programmed with. He was born to speak, like to write, and to make that, like, he had a dominant, like, and revolutionary kink that it was just so catchy and contagious and viral. During his lifetime, everyone loved it. So there are many people today, many famous rappers and singers who, it's the exact same thing. Some people have a FOXP2 gene that is geared, I should, programmed, and with a specific kink to it that results in the creation of exactly what I should say, it results in other people um, catching on to a certain meaning that is not only about words, not only about spelling, not only about letters or symbols or anything like that, but is more about a rhythm that can, music accompanied with language, it transcends, um, and it transcends only something that is read. But even people who read, for example, I'll say that, like, people who read the Torah, people who religiously read the Torah, there is a very specific, I mean, it's literally like, it's the same, it's been the same, and it is something that has been, it's not only about words, and this is where rabbinic um, culture and rabbinic interest, I'll use the word bailiwick, rabbinic bailiwick. Bailiwick means special interest. The rabbinic special interest is to find a meaning behind, like a truest meaning, the truest meaning behind these very old ancient words that are just so loved, and that when those words, when the Torah was initially transcribed, there was a very specific pattern or kink. I mean, hair on the head, it's called kink. Kinky hair is spirally. Spirally is curly, right? And even straight hair. And so, like, there's a rare gene um, that has to do with hair that only East Asians and only it comes from East Asia, and it has to do with hair. So I believe it's Japan. Um, Japan has the highest occurrence of this specific, very rare, like when I say rare, it's not rare in Japan necessarily, but it's rare in the whole world. It's actually that the kink of the hair is perfectly circular. Perfectly circular. So when you listening to Japanese language, it's something that Japanese people are very, very insular, are very, like, it's a perfect circle. Like, it's like they don't, there's a tendency to not, to remain, like, and so that's like straight hair. So there's straight hair that is that very rare only East Asian gene where it's like straight hair is just perfectly straight, and it's a result of, actually, it's a perfectly circular hair shaft that results in the release of kink, total release. But so even if you think you have straight hair, you probably don't actually have straight hair. There's still a kink to your hair, unless you happen to be East Asian or some kind of indigenous North or South American. Indigenous North and South Americans also carry, randomly mixed into the population, the circular hair gene, which is a total release of kink. Otherwise, there is certainly kink to the hair, regardless of whether it is hair that is like laying, that is like more pointed. I'll say more pointed. There's like more pointed, but that would actually be just such a large kink to the hair that it seems like the um, spiral of it cannot be, doesn't coil or bounce, but there's still a, like, curl to it. So many people have wavy hair and many people have kinky curly hair, and that is still the same gene. That is not the same gene as the indigenous American and the East Asian gene that has no, absolutely no curl to it, because the hair shaft is perfectly circular. It's a rare gene. Um, so it's interesting that okay, I will just bring it up. The reason why I brought that up is because the second to last haircut that I got, the barber and I, we were discussing that he has like he was trying to cut my hair into my curls into a round shape, and as we were talking, we were discussing how hair is basically like a kind of like a microphone. Kind of like a microphone, because hair, it channels sound. It either muffles sound or it allows sound to go straight, like with it doesn't like disrupt the sound from just going straight into the eardrum. So that is also, I would say, related to hearing and speaking at the same time. Basically having a back and forth discussion. Okay, so I will tell you about my own experience with languages and how I have the so autistic people, and many autistic people are nonverbal. And this is interesting. This is very interesting for scientists who want to understand how the FOXP2 gene relates to that. But like I say, it's also interesting that the genetics of hair are definitely related to the FOXP2 gene. Um, and that's something to consider. Um, so, like, for example, I'll tell you how hair is related to autism. Me, myself personally, I have a double hair whorl. That's very rare. It's very rare, especially for a female. Um, it's mostly males who are affected with a double, or either a double or triple or more hair whorls on their head. Most people have a single hair whorl. And the having more than one hair whorl is associated with autistic symptoms. And so, me, I have no East Asian genetics. And the very first person that I dated, he was Southeast Asian. And I should say XC is Southeast Asian. XC is Southeast Asian. And we didn't know this about each other when we first met. And we didn't really know this. He never knew that until I shaved my head. I took a razor and I shaved my own head years after he and I were no longer dating. But throughout the entirety of us dating, he had no idea that I had the double hair whorl gene. He also has the double hair whorl gene, and we have in a very large high school. We happen to be just, but it's like it's interesting. It's very interesting how people meet people and why people become feel understood. I should say feel deciphered. There's comprehension and then there's decipherment. Okay? Decipherment and then there's comprehension. Sometimes people don't need to comprehend in order to decipher, and sometimes people don't need to decipher in order to comprehend. But it is very, perhaps not random at all, that the first person that I happened to date, he also had a double hair whorl, just like me. And so it's interesting. Um, so, I don't like the word I, because the pronoun I. It's not that I don't like the word I, because I in English is a homophone with, is a homophone. And it is related to personal identification of ego, 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 ego. stop eating this hummus. I've been eating plantain chips with hummus. Lemon dill hummus with my plantain chips, my Maduro chips. And now I'm gonna take a bite out of this. It's vegan. Vegan. Vegan cheese. Okay. Where was I? In a previous video, I can link it in the description. I was developing and this idea of how the um, the Homo sapien bone structure. The Homo sapien bone structure is directly a result of the gravitational pressure that affects the planet. So the planet, the Earth of planet, Earth of the planet is subject to gravitational pressure, not only from the sun, but also from the moon. So, for example, the bone of the eyes, right? Because there's two eyes. There's not one eye, there's two eyes. The bone of the eye is called the orbit. That's what it's called. It's called the orbit. It's actually there's a um there's a an entrance. There's an entrance behind each eye. So there are two entrances in the skull where the nerves of the eyeballs go into the brain, and once they go into the brain, they cross over. So the right eye nerves go connect to the left side of the brain, to the occipital lobe, and the nerves of the left eye enter the orbit. That's what it's called, the orbit. It enters the orbit, and then it crosses over to the right side of the brain. So, the eyes are actually a development of how the moon, the shape of the moon, yes, the round shape of the moon, is basically how it's not bone, right? There's bone, and then there's um, soft tissue, soft tissue. So the moon is not inside of the earth. The moon is spotless. The moon is spotless. It doesn't stay in the same spot. The moon is spotless. The moon is going all around the earth, and it's not in the earth, and it's not on the earth. And because of that, that is why we have eyes. We have two eyes. Okay, so I personally, I feel like a little offended and a little like belittled that the word I does not express that I am different from the moon, right? That eyes are different from the moon. Why? Because the moon, the reason why I have two eyes is because the moon is kind of like a secret to the earth. The earth doesn't realize that the moon is there, obviously. The earth doesn't realize, the planet doesn't realize that moon is there. Does it? Does it realize? Does planet is different from earth. I am a body of water with earth included. I'm a body of water with earth included, with gas included, and also with heat included. So that's all four phases plus, and there's as a result of that, there are additional phases too. There are additional phases too. Additional. I call it four phase. Once you get to four phase, then it's like that's an additional phase, right? That is like life. So it's a little bit like it's belittling to me. It's primitive. It's primitive. The word I, not UIE. I, I, I. That's how it's spelled. I mean, it's primitive to say that, like, to conflate myself with the moon. It's not true, because the moon is only Earth. The moon affects. I am a result of the moon, but I am no moon. No, I am no moon. There's one moon, and that's what I means. The letter I, it has the same definition as. But that's not what moon is. Moon is. It would be more accurate to say oh. It would be more accurate to say oh as a form of self-identification. And actually, in Italian, that is the word O. In Italian, O, H-O, that is the word for, that's the personal identification word for the self. Since Roman times. O, H-O. It would be wonderful if English could adapt that, program that concept of O, as opposed to it's not one or the other. um, so that is the beautiful part about language, is that it's programmable and it lasts for a very long time. That all the programming that goes into languages has effects for thousands of years, It's wonderful, wonderful. Every language has truth, has truth to it. And what do I mean by truth? Truth is truest. There's only one truest truth. Every language has truth to it, and it's like scattered everywhere. Like the true seed of language, of future language, the true seed of future language is like I said, there's only one truest true. And we'll get there, right? We'll get to that final programming that all of us can be united and self-identify. Not only self-identify, but it's basically orient. And what is orient? Orient is orbital. I don't think orbitation is a word. Orbitation. Orientation, orbitation. No, orbitation is not a word. But like, I am a autonomous, right? O is a autonomous orbital, sorry, not orbit. O is an autonomous orbital. I orbit towards warmth. heat. I don't orbit towards heat because that would just burn. That would burn, right? But I orbit towards warmth. What does that mean? It means that we can never truly the sun already, sorry, not the sun, star already fused, and so there's no way from you for O and to fuse, but we are attracted towards warmth. So no, I'm not gonna go into the fire, but if I make fire, I'm attracted to warmth. Yeah, and I'm attracted to the warmth of a person's smile. I'm attracted to the warmth of a person's look. Okay? And there's heat. That's why each of us we have four phases. Only one of those four phases is heat. Heat. Okay. So, and I'll give you examples of some like comforting types of phrases that I love. Like a way of phrasing things. So, for example, red bird, be flying gracefully. Red bird be flying gracefully. Or grace be finding opportunities to illuminate. Hat, lovely hat, be settling well overhead. So I really like, it's like so soothing for me personally, so soothing and satisfying. I love that combination. Um, you know, like something be um, progressive tense verb, um, blank, blank, you know, blank. So I really like how streamlined that kind of phrasing is. Like I said, I also much prefer the first person pronoun O because that's more representative of um, um, I mean, you can't even make it like a double O. Ooh, ooh, right? O would be ooh. You say ooh, ooh be chattin', ooh be chattin', you be chattin', right? That fits in with who, ooh, and you, right? Because ooh is like you, ooh is like who. So